everyone loses their shit over the thumbnail, please hear me out first. Everyone, it's Emily Fox. Today's video is gonna be the video about my most disappointing reads of 2018. So this year I've read over 100 books and I wanted to talk about the ones that I thought were overhyped or didn't live up to said hype or just my own expectations. Books that I thought I would really like and that I ended up liking a lot less than expected. Keep in mind that these are not the worst books that I've read this year. It's a whole series I'm doing at the end of the year, so there's going to be the best, the worst, the most disappointing, which is today, and the most surprising books that I've read this year. Everything will be linked down below once it's up. Don't forget to subscribe because you definitely don't want to miss any of those. I was going to keep the most controversials for last, but you know what? Let's jump into it, because I feel like a lot of people will have clicked on the video because of this one. This is Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. I want to start by mentioning I gave it 4 stars. So it's not a horrible read. That's not my point here. It's just that it was so hyped that I had high expectations when I went into it. I had read the Grisha trilogy beforehand and I really enjoyed the universe. And that's one of the things I kind of was mad about in this one. First off, people tend to say that you don't need to read the Grisha trilogy before going into this book. And I completely disagree because the magic system is never explained in here. And even after reading the first trilogy, I got to certain points where I was like a little confused. So I feel like if you have no idea what the hell is going on in this book, it's because you haven't read the first trilogy. Second, I love the Russian-inspired universe. I loved all those little bits in the first book, especially of the Grisha trilogy. Basically, the trilogy, the first book was by far my favorite one. And I felt like all those elements that I liked so much weren't part of this book, and it kind of left me a little bit disappointed. With that said, I do love the characters, so if you're someone that get attached very easily to characters, you're gonna love this one. And I would say that one of the things that disappointed me was definitely the ending. I feel like things were so easy for everyone. There's gonna be no spoilers in here. I will keep everything spoiler free unless I say so, and I'll make sure you're able to like click ahead. But no spoilers. I just felt like the ending was so easy for them. Like everything went without any issue, and it just made it kind of unrealistic. And I don't know, I expected to absolutely love this, and I felt like this was a little bit forgettable. And I'm not someone that forgets very easily plots, although it will seem like it's not true in this video because there's another one that I completely forgot what it was about because it's so forgettable. But this one was a little bit like that, which kind of frustrated me because again, so hyped. I really thought I was going to enjoy this, and it kind of left me a little overall. I'm still planning on reading book 2. It's going to be part of my top 19 books that I want to read in 2019. So it's still happening. A lot of people are saying that book 2 is much better. My hopes are still very high. I'm pretty sure I'm going to enjoy book 2. But yes, book 1 was still solid. It just wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be. So a little overhyped in my opinion. I feel like I didn't explain anything about this book, but it's a YA fantasy book. I feel like everyone has heard of it. So I'm not going to go into details, but next one is also one that I think people are going to want to murder me over. I'll explain it a little bit more, but The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. First book I've ever read by her, and it's the one I was mentioning that it's completely forgettable. I feel like I'm someone that has a pretty good memory. I'll remember like the general plot of books that I've read years ago, but this one, I swear I can't remember most of it. Like, most of it. It's a pretty big book. There's like over 350 pages, and it's a pretty like big book too, so I feel like it should be like more pages if it was a little smaller. And I feel like this is a mix of every single popular YA fantasy book I've ever read. In this book, you're following a main character and her 2 sisters, I think, that her parents are dead, so she's an orphan, and she lives with fairies, so obviously she will be bullied there. And then there's a like huge blank of what this is about in my head, and then the ending. I swear, like nothing really makes sense in the book. Maybe it's because I listened to it, like most of it as an audiobook, probably didn't help, but it's just so bland. And when people rave about it, I'm just left very confused. I just don't understand why people liked it. I feel like I could mention like 20 other ones that are so similar / better. And the romance just made me cringe and made no sense to me. And it's kind of attempting to like have a really intense ending, but it left me again, I didn't really care at all. And yeah, such an underwhelming book. Like it almost made it to my worst of the year because it just so bland. That's the best way of describing it. I don't know if anyone felt the same. I feel like everyone loved it. So if you feel the same, feel free to support me in the comment section. But yeah, I really thought I was going to like it. I believe this might be a duology or a trilogy, and I'm not going to continue because again. I would have to reread this first. I can't remember most of it, and it's just, I swear it never happens to me. Strange Dreamer by Laini Taylor. Another one people are gonna freak out, but again, hear me out. I enjoyed the first half of this book. You're following a main character who is someone that likes books, which I feel like everyone that likes books like reading about people that like books. I feel you. And he's really obsessed with a certain city, and basically he goes on an adventure, ends up going there. And you're also following another storyline where the children of the dead gods that are forgotten, people don't know they exist, are still alive and trying to survive, and there's great magical powers there, and that was super interesting. My issue, second part of the book, love at first sight. I hate that YA trope so bad, and it is a YA fantasy, but it felt like it was a romance disguised as a YA fantasy. And yeah, I just could not deal. It just ruined the book for me. Like, I was so mad at the second half of the book. There's the second book that came out. Didn't read it because I know it's going to be more cheesy, creepy blah, blah, stuff in there that I don't want to read. And by creepy, I mean like second-hand embarrassment. Like, I get it very easily reading romance stuff. That's why I don't like it. In movies, I'm fine, but for books, I just can't for some reason. And yeah, very disappointed because I really enjoyed the first half of the book. And damn it, I thought I had found a new fantasy, like YA fantasy I liked, but no. City of Ghosts by Victoria Schwab. I love her writing. I was really excited to read this one. I thought it was a YA paranormal. It's a little girl that sees ghosts. And unfortunately it was middle grade and I didn't know. And I feel like my issue with this one was the fact that I already knew about the author, loved her writing, and middle grade books, nothing that was good writing wise. Obviously it's you know, more simple so kids can enjoy it. And I didn't. It was kind of very, very blah. Nothing like horrible in it. It's just, there was nothing good either. And I was left incredibly disappointed reading it. I was like, really? Like, I almost like speed read the ending because it was like so bored. So yeah, incredibly disappointed. I would have been disappointed generally speaking, but I would have been like, oh, it's my own fault. It's a middle grade. But considering the author, I love her usually. I love her writing usually. And yeah, just overall very disappointed with this. I feel like the reviews from people that read it on BookTube are also pretty negative, so I'm not alone here for once. Beneath the Sugar Sky. Okay, real talk here. In that series, this one was probably my favorite book. So it probably shouldn't be included here, but I'm kind of officially announcing that I'm super disappointed by the series, generally speaking. And I think that it's mostly the author, because I did try to read another book by her this year, and I have the same feeling. This series, it's great because there's a bunch of diversity. I love the premise, basically kids that found a little magical world, and when they come back here, they can't readjust. And I like the magical universe that they were going to, and I wanted to read more about it, and this book definitely gave it to me. I didn't really care for the second book. The first book was fine, but I'm realizing that every time I read a book by her, there's something missing for me. Like, there's something missing, and I can't pinpoint exactly what. I feel like the plot is too vague and just there's kind of a little bit pointless. I like how magical it was, but I think it's just that series and maybe even all her books are just not for me, unfortunately. So I was super disappointed because I really wanted to like it, especially since everyone else does, but I think I'm just giving up. I mean, after 3 books, I think I'm allowed to give up. Actually, next one, I'm going to be talking about the whole genre because this year I was so disappointed with the whole mystery thriller genre. What the hell happened this year? I don't know if it's all of them came out this year, but a bunch of the ones that I read did, and they were all what apparently is now called domestic thrillers and mysteries. I didn't know it was a thing, but now I can add it to the list of things I don't like. If I never read another story with a wife or a woman or a girl in the title, it would still be too soon. I cannot read one more book about a wife that is an alcoholic and an unreliable narrator like ever again. They just blend all together. Like, it just, I read Woman in the Window, The Wife Between Us, Behind Closed Doors. I'll put some more on the screens because I'm telling you, like, completely forgettable stories. I felt like some of them, especially like Sometimes I Lie, they tried so hard to have twist that, like, you know what I mean? Like, when I'm an author, like, I like a twist as much as the next person, but like sometimes I feel like it's like you see the first twist coming, the second one you're like, okay, there's a bunch of twists, and then there's like Another one that feels so forced just so the author can be like, haha, you didn't see that one coming in. And you're like, of course not. It makes no sense. You know what I mean? And I feel like that one was trying super, super hard. Again, the reviews are completely against me here because everyone seemed to have loved it. That's why I picked up all those books, because they were so hyped. I kept seeing them everywhere. And I kept seeing really great ratings on Goodreads, so I was excited to read them. I wasn't like trying to just read all the bad ones. It just happened that way for me. If you have any recommendations, by the way, for mystery trailers, please feel free to leave them down below. Because I've read some of them that I really like how the twists were going, like even The Kind Worth Killing. There's a bunch of twists in there, but for me they still made sense and didn't feel as forced as the ones in these books. And some of these books had nothing happening. You know when you read a mystery and there's no mystery at all? That's how I felt about some of them, especially like Behind Closed Doors. I don't know, I guess it's supposed to be a thriller, but like no thriller for me in there. It just, honestly, the whole genre just left me super disappointed. There's only like 2 books that weren't part of this group in my head. There's like one that is in my most surprising books of the year, and then like Sharp Objects by Gillian Flynn. And I mean, it makes sense because Gillian Flynn writes very complex, interesting, messed up female characters, so if you're looking for some of that, definitely recommend her books in general. But yeah, the rest just bored me. I also tend to include horror in that type of mix of genre, but the only one that I want to talk about right now is The Outsiders by Stephen King. I tend to read most of his books, especially as he's coming out with them, because I'm trying to like read all of them, which probably never gonna happen, but you know, I'm doing my best. And I want to mention that the first half of the book was so solid. Like, I thought I was going to give this like a 4.5 or 5 stars, and then it just went bleh towards the end. I will be mentioning some spoilers. I'll tell you when. Let's start with what it is about. It started solid, like I was saying, because it's kind of a murder investigation. There's a little boy that got kidnapped and killed, and the witness, the DNA there, all point out to one person, a man who is super well loved, very famous in their little town. I believe he's the baseball coach, something like that. And he says he didn't do it, and he's trying to prove that he didn't do it, but the investigation, everyone is pointing at him. It seems to be him. But this is where the spoiler appears, so if you want to come back whenever the book is not on the screen anymore, feel free to do that. Although personally, I wish I had known, because I would have prepared myself mentally. But basically, paranormal. I was so disappointed. I didn't think there was anything like fantasy elements in there, and when it happened, I was like, seriously? I felt like it just brought everything down, and the ending was so stretched and so weird. And there was also some spoilers for the Mr. Mercedes trilogy, which I didn't expect, and I was just so underwhelmed by the ending. It started so good though, but yeah. Overall, kind of disappointed with it. It was still a good book. Like, I think I gave it 3.5 stars, which anything over 3 stars for me is good, but like, really? Last book in that category is Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter. I also read Good Daughter by her this year, and I think this one was better, but I'm officially stating here that I will not be reading more of her books because for some reason they bother me. I read a lot of messed up stuff, like, I'm just gonna say it. And it usually doesn't affect me at all, but for some reason, it feels like in her books it's a bit too gratuitous for me, kind of. A lot of violence, sexual violence towards women, and it just gets to me and I don't like it. I thought it was way worse in Pretty Girls. It felt very like focused on pretty women and just torturing and messed up shit happening to them. And it just left a bad taste in my mouth, and I wasn't planning on reading more by her, and accidentally I got The Good Daughter, not knowing was by her, and I had the same experience. And the fact that I was also listening to them as an audiobook probably didn't help. So I feel like a lot of people will have no issue with them. They'll just enjoy all the messed up stuff, which is all good. And a bunch of people will probably DNF because it's just too much. And I guess I'm in there. Although I didn't DNF them, I did finish them, but like, just not for me. Okay, this one I'm gonna have a hard time describing, but we're gonna attempt it. This is gonna be also very unpopular opinion, but I love sci-fi. I want to read more, and I wanted to try to read more like the classic sci-fis too. And my experience has been very hit and miss so far, and this one was a miss for me. I was aware going into it that I wasn't going to be giving this 5 stars because it's a military sci-fi, and I'm really not into military. And but I wasn't going to penalize the rating because of that. The premise is why I chose to read this. You're following someone that goes to war, and because it's in space and there's like time dilation and blah blah blah, it's kind of like he's coming back to Earth after like a year for him is like longer and longer for people on Earth. So it starts with like, I think like 16 years and ends up being like at the end like 1,000 years. So he feels very odd coming back to Earth, kind of old-fashioned everything. And although a lot of people made it their mission to try and explain the book to me as if I didn't get it, I understand that this book was about the author's story going through Vietnam War. I get it. I get that it was about the whole like pointlessness of the war. Again, I get it. My issues were the writing, which I couldn't get into, and the sexism and kind of just discrimination, homophobia in the book. I don't think it makes sense. The book was written, what, in 70s? Published in 74. And I refuse to believe that everyone was like that and that he thought that futuristic world would be even worse. Like, it just makes no sense to me. And I have a few quotes to kind of just pinpoint my issue here. So I'm only going to read 2, but keep in mind there's more. Like, there's obviously a few post-its in here, and there were a few more that I just didn't put a post-it for. Then unleash Stargate's 18 sex-starved men on our women, compliant and promiscuous by military custom and law, but desiring nothing so much as sleep. So basically, in his mind, in the future, women are being raped in the military and it's perfectly fine. That and the other quotes that I'll mention, these things just took me out of the story. Like, it just disgusted me, and yeah, I just don't think a book like that survives this test of time, I guess. And I mean, I understand that some classics will be dated, but it just, I don't have to read them. I don't have to enjoy them, and I can still call them out on their shit whenever I read them. The second quote is, I'd gotten used to open female homo sex. In the months since we left Earth, even stopped resenting the loss of potential partners. The men together still gave me a chill, though. So again, I understand that maybe it's the character who is a shit person, but still left me kind of disgusted about the whole thing. And since the book wasn't that great, I feel like those things just made it worse for me. Like, if the book was amazing and there were a few instances like this, I will still call them out, but I would be able to tell other people that the book is still great. Unfortunately, the book wasn't great for me, so those things just made it worse. Plus the ending, which, again, come back when the book isn't on the screen anymore because I don't want to spoil it for anyone, but I don't think it's a huge spoiler, but still. I was annoyed at the ending because he is in somewhat of a relationship with another woman, and isn't it also convenient that after continuing the war, being forced to, kind of, it comes back like 1,000 years later, and she found a way to still be young and wait for him. She's like just 27 or something, so it's all good, you know? It just felt so like conveniently, ending it on a positive note and everything, and it just made no sense with the rest of the story in my opinion. So maybe I just didn't get it. It's possible, but at the end of the day, I just thought I would warn everyone, and then you can decide for yourself if that's something you can still enjoy or not. The next one is also something that's gonna get me the pitchforks. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. I want to mention that I think this is a type of book that if I were to reread it, the more I would do so, the more I would enjoy it. With that said, my first read wasn't so great. It's a very absurd sci-fi. And I don't really have anything actually against absurdity and humor, but it was kind of too much at points. And I feel like the best way to describe my experience with this is to compare it to, there's a movie, a French movie called or like RRRR 7 times. And it's a very silly movie, humor-wise. And I feel like if you watch it with someone for the first time, you think it's hilarious afterwards to just share the jokes. And then when you actually have had so much fun joking about it and you make someone else watch it and they watch it with you, it's kind of awkward because it turns out it's not that funny when you're actually watching it. It's just afterwards the jokes. That's my opinion about this. I feel like people that have read and reread this book can joke about other people with other people about it. And then when you actually read it, you're like, really? But again, I feel like that's something that I would enjoy more if I reread it, and I probably will in the future, just not right now. This is another book that I picked up because of the premise, and I ended up being kind of disappointed. I have read the whole trilogy. This is The Last Policeman by Ben H. Winters. The premise, super intriguing, obviously. You're following a policeman as he's trying to solve a murder, or what he thinks is a murder, because everyone thinks it's just suicide, because everyone is going a little crazy on Earth because there is a asteroid coming, and for sure it's happening in 6 months. So you're following the book. The first book is 6 months before impact, and then it's like a month, and then like a day or a week, whatever. So it goes like that throughout the series. And the first book I thought was the most solid one of the three. If you enjoy that one, okay, I would not continue. If you love it, I mean, feel free to do so. But the overall trilogy kind of like went like this for me. It started okay and then was more and more disappointing. So yeah, unfortunately, the overall series is a disappointment for me. The first book was okay. I can't say much more without spoiling it, so I'm gonna stop here, but I was excited to read this and it didn't live up to my expectations. Quickly mentioning Artificial Condition by Martha Wells. It's a sci-fi novella. First book made it to my most surprising / I really enjoyed that book, and this one was so boring. Nothing happened until like most of the story went through it, and it's a novella, so I mean, if there's not a lot of good content in a short amount of time, it's kind of boring. So I was left disappointed with that one for sure. And then I believe this is the last one. The Sudden Appearance of Hope by Claire North. I have a complicated relationship with this author. I love her premises, but not each book will end up becoming a favorite of mine. And this one, the premise was amazing, as usual, but the book per se was kind of oof. In this book, you're following Hope, who kind of has this ability, unfortunately for her, I guess, where people forget about her when she's not in the room. It kind of got worse and worse when she hit like 16. Her family even forgot about her, and as soon as she leaves the room in a few seconds, people forgot she even was there. So she uses her power to kind of become a thief, and there's a story going on, and I thought it was going to be more action-packed than it was. I think that if you're someone that tends to enjoy more like literary fiction, you would enjoy this more. There's a bunch of stream of consciousness, and it's just like a lot more slow-paced than I expected. So it was still a good book, but I was left pretty disappointed, unfortunately. I almost forgot. I wanted to quickly mention Only Human by Sylvain Neuvel, which is the last book in the Temesval trilogy. Again, this is a series for me that went like this. The first book was the most solid one. I still enjoyed the book 2, but book 3 left me kind of meh. I can't mention too much because, again, it's the last book in a trilogy, but let's just say that it was kind of vague, had not much to do with the whole rest of the series, and it kind of included also some mention of like more current events, and it just, I don't know what I was expecting, but definitely not that. Definitely disappointed, but again, can't say much more because it's book 3, right? So that's gonna be it for today's video. Those are the books that left me kind of disappointed. Please feel free to agree or disagree politely in the comment section. We can have a discussion about it. Don't forget to subscribe because, once again, it's a whole series. There's a bunch of videos coming up. And also don't forget to give it a big thumbs up to support unpopular opinions and agreeing that it's okay to have them. Because let's be real, sometimes on booktube it doesn't feel like it's okay, but it should be. So it's gonna be it. I'm gonna be putting on the screen other videos that I've done that I recommend you check out, and we'll see you in my next one. Bye.